The Galactic Council Chamber stretched for miles in every direction. 12,000 representatives from across the known universe sat in crystalline seats that floated above a floor made of pure light. The dome overhead displayed the stars themselves, a reminder that this was the heart of galactic civilization, the place where the fate of entire worlds was decided with a single vote. High Chancellor Vorth of the Dominari Empire stood at the central podium, his four eyes scanning the massive crowd. His gray skin glistened under the chamber lights, and his obsidian staff of office hummed with ancient power. For 300 years, he had led this council. For 300 years, no species had dared to challenge the established order. Today, everything changed. The great doors at the far end of the chamber opened without warning. Every translator implant in the room crackled with static. Every floating seat locked into position. And every representative turned to stare at the impossible sight walking toward them. A human woman moved down the central promenade with the calm confidence of someone who belonged there. Her name was Ambassador Lucia Vance, and she wore robes that made the entire council gasp in recognition. The flowing fabric shifted between solid matter and pure light. It bore symbols that had not been seen for 300,000 years. The robes of the eternal architects. Behind her walked 12 more humans, all dressed the same way. Their footsteps made no sound, but the floor beneath them glowed brighter with each step, as if the station itself recognized their authority. Admiral Greth of the Velern Consortium leaned forward in his seat. His insect-like face twisted with confusion. "This cannot be real," he whispered to his aide. "The architects vanished before our species learned to make fire, and the humans were exterminated 4 centuries ago." But the humans were very much alive. Ambassador Vance reached the speaking platform and turned to face the assembly. Her brown eyes, so ordinary compared to the exotic features of the alien representatives, swept across the crowd without fear. When she spoke, her voice did not come through the chamber sound system. It came through the walls themselves, through the floor, through the very structure of the station. "The Galactic Council has tried to destroy humanity 17 times, she said. "You poisoned our air. You sent asteroids toward our world. You released plagues into our population. And when none of that worked, you sent 800,000 warships to finish the job." The chamber remained absolutely silent. Not High Chancellor Vorth found his voice. "The Earth Purge was necessary. Your species was deemed too dangerous for spacefaring status. The Council acted according to established protocol." Lucia smiled. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. "I am aware of your protocols, Chancellor. I am also aware that your 800,000 ships never returned. No distress signals. No survivors. No debris." She raised her hand, and a holographic image appeared above her palm. It showed a region of space that made several representatives cry out in terror. The void expanse. The forbidden zone that had been quarantined for 100,000 years. The place where the architects had vanished. "You have spent 4 centuries wondering what happened to your fleet," Lucia continued. "Allow me to satisfy your curiosity." The hologram expanded, zooming past warning beacons and quarantine markers, into the heart of the void expanse itself, where there should have been nothing but dead space and ancient ruins. There was instead a thriving civilization. Thousands of worlds connected by streams of golden light. Stations the size of moons orbited artificial suns. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen moved between structures that defied physics. And at the center of it all, blue and green and beautiful, was Earth. "The architects were not dead," Lucia said. "They were waiting for a species worthy of their legacy. And they found us." The chamber erupted into chaos. 400 years earlier, before the humans came to the Council, a small Dominari scout ship drifted through empty space on the edge of the void expanse. "Captain," Threl Mornash stood at the bridge viewport, staring at the quarantine beacons that marked the boundary of Forbidden's territory. His gray skin was darker than most Dominari, marked by the scars of decades of military service. He had patrolled this border 100 times without incident. Today felt different. "Captain," called Navigator Yin from her station. Her 6 arms moved across multiple control panels simultaneously. As a Kasori, she was one of the finest mathematicians in the fleet. Right now, her compound eyes were wide with confusion. "I am detecting an energy signature that should not exist." Mornash turned from the viewport. "Explain. The readings match architect technology." Yin's voice trembled slightly. "But that is impossible. Architect systems have been dormant for 300 millennia. Nothing could activate them." Dr. Pollux looked up from his research station. The elderly Velern scientist had served on this ship for 20 years, always hoping to study the architect ruins up close. His mandibles clicked nervously. "Perhaps a malfunction in our sensors?" "I have run diagnostics 6 times, Yin replied. "The readings are accurate." Before Mornash could respond, the ship lurched violently. Crew members grabbed their stations as the entire vessel began moving toward the void expanse, pulled by an invisible force. "Engines to full reverse," Mornash ordered. "I am trying, Captain." The pilot shouted. "We have no control. Something is pulling us in." The quarantine beacons passed by the viewport, their warning lights flashing uselessly. The ship crossed into forbidden space, into the territory from which no vessel had ever returned. What they saw made every crew member freeze in disbelief. The void expanse was not empty. It was not dead. It was alive with lights and movement and ships. Massive structures floated in the darkness, built from materials that glowed with inner fire. Planets that should have been barren showed blue oceans and green forests and city lights. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, were humans. Their ships moved in formations that no species in the galaxy used. Their stations displayed symbols that Dr. Pollux recognized from his decades of studying architect ruins. They had not just survived the Earth Purge. They had become something new. Transmission came through the communication system. A human face appeared on the screen. A young man with dark skin and calm eyes. "Dominari vessel," he said in perfect Dominari language. "You were not invited, but you are expected. The Council of Inheritors will decide your fate." The transmission ended. Before anyone could speak, escort ships appeared on all sides, vessels that combined human design with architect technology. They herded the scout ship deeper into the void expanse. An hour later, Captain Mornash stood before a massive display. It showed the remains of the Purge fleet, 800,000 warships now arranged in a ring around a small moon. They were not destroyed. They were preserved, a monument to what had happened 4 centuries ago. Those ships carried the beings who tried to murder our entire species. Said a voice behind him. Mornash turned to face an elderly human woman in architect robes. Her white hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes held the weight of centuries. "I am Elder Webb," she said. "And you, Captain, are the first visitor from the outside galaxy in 400 years. You have much to learn about what humanity has become." She led him to a window overlooking an impossible sight. Earth itself, surrounded by rings of light and orbited by stations that dwarfed anything the Dominari had ever built. "The architects did not just save us," Elder Webb explained. "They adopted us, made us their heirs, gave us everything." "Why?" Mornash managed to ask. The Elder smiled, and in that moment Mornash saw something that terrified him more than any weapon. "Because we were worthy," she said. "And now the galaxy must decide what to do about that." In the doorway behind them, a figure stepped into view. Mornash recognized the uniform immediately. Dominari military. 400 years out of date. Allow me to introduce converted Admiral Thyssen, the elder said. He commanded the Purge fleet. He has been waiting a very long time to meet someone from home. The Admiral smiled with a Dominari face. But his eyes held something entirely human, and Monash understood that his people had made a terrible mistake. One that could not be undone. That Captain Threll Monash had faced death many times during his military career. He had fought pirates in the Outer Rim. He had survived boarding actions against hostile vessels. He had once walked away from a crash that killed everyone. Else aboard his ship. None of that prepared him for. Standing face to face with converted Admiral Thyssen, the Admiral wore a Dominari uniform that had not been manufactured in 400 years. His gray skin was unmarked by age, preserved by technology that the Dominari could not imagine. His 4 eyes focused on Monash with an intensity that felt like physical pressure. "You look frightened, Captain," Thyssen said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "That is understandable. When I first realized what had happened to me, I was frightened too." Monash forced himself to speak. "What did they do to you?" "They gave me a choice." Thyssen walked to the window, overlooking the monument of captured ships. "When the humans took our fleet, they could have destroyed us. 800,000 vessels, millions of soldiers, all helpless before their architect weapons. Instead, they offered us something unexpected: mercy." Elder Webb stood nearby, watching the exchange with patient eyes. "Every soldier in that fleet was given the same option," she said. "Serve humanity willingly, or remain in stasis until they changed their minds. Most chose service. Some are still sleeping. You call this service?" Monash asked. "You have enslaved him." Thyssen turned sharply. "I am not enslaved, Captain. I was shown the truth. I was shown what my people did to the humans, not through propaganda, but through memory. I experienced their suffering as if it were my own. The children gasping for breath as our poison filled their atmosphere. The families watching asteroids fall toward their cities. The millions who died screaming while my fleet cheered." His voice cracked slightly, and Monash saw something impossible, genuine grief in the eyes of a Dominari warrior. "I chose to serve because I understood that my people were wrong," Thyssen continued. "We tried to murder an entire species because we feared what they might become. And now they have become exactly what we feared. The irony is not lost on me." Elder Webb gestured for Monash to follow her. "Come. Your crew is being shown other aspects of our civilization. You should see what we have built." They walked through corridors made of material that felt alive under their feet. The walls displayed images of human history, their early struggles on Earth, their first steps into space, the horror of the Purge, and their eventual salvation by the architects. "The architects found us at our lowest moment," Webb explained as they walked. "Our planet was dying. Our population had been reduced to a few million survivors hiding in underground bunkers. We had lost everything except our will to live." "Why did they choose your species?" Monash asked. "The galaxy contains thousands of intelligent races, many older and more advanced than humanity was." Webb stopped before a massive door that glowed with architect symbols. "They had been watching for millions of years, Captain, observing every species that developed intelligence, looking for something specific." "What?" The door opened, revealing a chamber that took Monash's breath away. It was a garden, but unlike any garden he had ever seen. Plants from 100 worlds grew in impossible harmony. Water flowed upward toward a sun that hung in the center of the room like a captured star. And at the heart of it all, surrounded by flowers that sang with actual voices, sat a being that was clearly not human. The keeper had 6 limbs that ended in hands with too many fingers. Its skin was translucent, showing patterns of light that moved like thoughts beneath the surface. It had no face that Monash could recognize, but he knew with absolute certainty that it was looking at him. "A living architect," he whispered. "The last one," Webb confirmed. "The others transcended long ago, moving beyond physical form into something we cannot yet comprehend. The Keeper remained to guide their successors." The Keeper spoke, but not with sound. Its words appeared directly in Mornash's mind, bypassing his translator implant entirely. The Dominari fear what they cannot control. The Velern calculate risk without considering value. The Ythrani observe, but rarely act. Every species we watched had limitations that defined them, boundaries they could not cross. The mental voice felt ancient, older than stars. "Humanity is different. Your species contains everything, creators and destroyers, saints and monsters, builders and breakers. You adapt. You grow. You surprise yourselves. That is why we chose you. Not because you are best, but because you have no limits." Mornash struggled to process what he was hearing. "The galaxy believes the architects were gods. We were students," the Keeper replied. "We learned much, but we could not overcome our own nature. We became too careful, too cautious, too afraid of making mistakes. In the end, we transcended because we could not evolve. Humanity will do what we could not. They will grow beyond us." The Keeper's form flickered, and Mornash realized that even this last architect was fading, slowly joining its people in whatever existence they had found beyond physical reality. "Elder," Webb led Mornash out of the garden chamber. They walked in silence until they reached a viewing platform, overlooking a massive shipyard. Mornash felt his blood freeze. Thousands of warships were under construction. Each one was larger than the biggest Dominari battlecruiser. Each one carried weapons that glowed with architect power, and each one bore the symbol of Earth on its hull. "We do not want war," Webb said quietly. "I have spent 4 centuries trying to build something better than revenge. But not everyone in my government agrees with me." A younger woman approached them. She wore a military uniform decorated with combat medals. Her dark skin was marked by old scars, and her eyes held a fury that had been burning for a very long time. "Commander Nira Okonkwo," Webb said. "She represents our defense forces." "I represent the families who died in the Purge," Okonkwo corrected. "I represent the billions who never got to grow up, never got to fall in love, never got to see what humanity could become. And I represent the faction that believes the galaxy should answer for what it did to us." She stepped closer to Mornash, and he had to fight the urge to step back. "Your people tried to murder mine," she said. "Your council voted for our extinction. Your fleets carried out the order without hesitation. And now you want us to forgive? To forget? To pretend it never happened? I was not part of the Purge," Mornash said carefully. "I was not even born." "Neither was I," Okonkwo replied. "But my grandmother remembered it. She told my mother, who told me. We remember every name, every death, every crime that went unpunished." Elder Webb placed a gentle hand on Okonkwo's shoulder. "We have discussed this many times, Commander. Revenge will not bring them back." "No," Okonkwo agreed. "But it will make sure the galaxy never forgets what happens when you try to destroy humanity." She walked away, her boots echoing against the floor. Mornash turned to Webb. "She wants war. She wants justice. There is a difference, though sometimes the line becomes difficult to see." Webb sighed heavily. "I am sending you back to the Council with a message. Humanity demands recognition. We demand acknowledgement of what was done to us. And we demand a seat at the table where galactic decisions are made. And if the Council refuses?" Webb looked out at the shipyard, at the thousands of warships being built with architect technology, at the power that humanity now controlled. Then Commander Okonkwo will get her war, and the galaxy will learn what the architects always knew about humanity. We are very, very good at surviving, but we are even better at winning. As Monash was escorted back to his ship, he saw converted Admiral Thiessen one more time. The former Dominari commander stood watching the scout vessel prepare for departure. "Tell your council the truth," Thiessen called out. "Tell them what you saw, and tell them they have one galactic rotation to respond." "Or what?" Thiessen smiled with a face that was Dominari, but eyes that held something completely different. "Or we come to them. And next time, we will not be offering mercy." The scout ship launched into the darkness, carrying a message that would change the galaxy forever. The Galactic Council chamber had not seen such chaos in 1,000 years. High Chancellor Vorth stood at his podium, gripping his obsidian staff so tightly that his gray knuckles had turned white. All around him, 12,000 representatives screamed at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for surrender. A few suggested negotiation, though their voices were drowned out by the fury of their neighbors. Captain Threl Mornesh had delivered his report 3 hours ago. The council had been arguing ever since. "We must strike now," shouted Admiral Greth of the Velern Consortium. His insect-like wings buzzed with agitation. "Before the humans become even stronger. Every moment we delay gives them time to build more ships, develop more weapons, spread further beyond the void expanse." "Strike with what?" demanded Senator Call of the Terrestrial Alliance. His reptilian eyes blinked rapidly with stress. "You heard the report. Their technology is based on architect designs. Our weapons would be useless against them. Then we develop better weapons. We research architect ruins. We find a way. We have been researching architect ruins for 100,000 years, Call replied coldly. We have learned nothing of value. The humans accomplished in 4 centuries what we could not achieve in millennia. That alone should tell us something about the difference between our species. Vorith slammed his staff against the podium, and the sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Slowly, the representatives fell silent. "We will maintain order," the High Chancellor said, his 4 eyes sweeping across the crowd. "We will discuss this matter rationally, and we will reach a decision that serves the interests of galactic civilization." A voice spoke from the back of the chamber, calm and clear despite the distance. "Perhaps you should ask the species you tried to exterminate what they think." Every head turned. Every eye focused on the figure walking down the central promenade. Ambassador Lucia Vance had returned. She was not alone this time. Behind her walked a delegation of 50 humans, all dressed in the flowing robes of the Eternal Architects. They moved in perfect formation, their footsteps synchronized, their faces showing no emotion. But what truly shocked the council was who walked beside her got matriarch Celine of the Ythrani Collective. One of the oldest and most respected leaders in the galaxy strode at Lucia's right hand. Her crystalline form caught the light of the chamber, raking it into rainbows that danced across nearby representatives. "Matriarch," Vorth said carefully, "you stand with the humans?" "I have stood with the humans for 200 years, Chancellor." Celine's voice rang like bells. "My people voted against the Earth Purge when it was first proposed. We were ignored. When the Purge failed and humanity fled toward the void expanse, we helped smuggle survivors to safety. We have maintained secret communication with them ever since." The chamber erupted again. Representatives shouted accusations of treason. Others demanded to know who else had been hiding secrets. The Velern delegation began moving toward the exits, as if expecting an attack at any moment. Lucia raised her hand, and the walls of the chamber glowed brighter. The shouting stopped immediately, replaced by stunned silence. "The station recognizes my authority," Lucia said simply. The architects built this chamber long before any of your species achieved spaceflight. It responds to their errors. She walked to the central platform and turned to face the assembly. Her ordinary human features seemed to glow with inner light. Humanity has discussed our options at length, she said. We could take revenge for the purge. We could destroy your fleets, occupy your worlds, force you to submit to our rule. With architect technology, this would be relatively simple. No one spoke. No one breathed. But that is not what we want. Lucia paused, letting her words sink in. We want recognition. We want a formal acknowledgement of what was done to us and why it was wrong. We want reparations for the billions who died. And we want a permanent seat on this council with full veto power over any decision that affects galactic security. Admiral Greth laughed bitterly. Veto power? You want us to give a species we tried to exterminate the ability to override our decisions? That is absurd. What is absurd, Lucia replied, is that a species as young as humanity was sentenced to death before we even left our own solar system. What is absurd is that this council looked at our art, our music, our literature, our capacity for love and sacrifice and creativity, and decided we were too dangerous to live. You did not try to communicate with us. You did not try to understand us. You simply decided to kill us all. She turned to look directly at High Chancellor Vorith. We were children, Chancellor. Cosmic infants taking our first steps into the universe. And you tried to murder us in our cradle because you were afraid of what we might become. Vorith met her gaze without flinching. Fear was not the only factor. Your species demonstrated unusual aggression. Your history was filled with warfare and conquest. We calculated the probability that you would become a threat and determined that elimination was the safest course. And now you have made your calculations true, Lucia said. Now you have turned us into exactly what you feared. The irony should not be lost on anyone in this chamber. A commotion near the back of the room drew attention away from the central platform. Spymaster Ref of the Velar Intelligence Service was pushing through the crowd toward Ambassador Vance, his compound eyes fixed on her with unmistakable urgency. Ambassador, he said when he reached her, I must speak with you privately, immediately. Lucia studied him for a moment, then nodded. They stepped aside, and Ref spoke in a voice too low for others to hear. What he told her made her expression change for the first time since she entered the chamber. The calm confidence flickered, replaced briefly by something that might have been surprise or anger. When she returned to the platform, her voice was harder than before. It appears that some members of this council have not learned from their mistakes. She raised her hand, and a holographic image appeared above her palm. It showed a massive weapon, a device clearly built from ancient technology. This is a planet killer. It was constructed during the architect era and hidden by species that hope to use it against the architects themselves. Several council members have been secretly preparing to deploy it against humanity. Chaos exploded through the chamber once more. Representatives turned on each other, accusers and accused screaming in rage. Security forces moved to contain potential violence. Through it all, Lucia stood perfectly still at the center of the storm. High Chancellor Vorith raised his staff again, but this time no one paid attention. The order he had maintained for 3 centuries was collapsing around him. Lucia touched a control on her wrist. I have transmitted a coded message to our forces in the void expanse. Consider this notice of breach of faith. The timeline for our demands has been accelerated. What timeline? Vorith demanded. You now have 1 standard day to agree to our terms. If you do not, humanity will take direct action to ensure our security. She turned to leave, her delegation falling in behind her. At the door, she paused and looked back at the chaos she had created. I came here hoping for peace, she said. There are those among my people who want war, who believe the only way to be safe is to destroy you before you can destroy us. I have argued against them for decades, but you are making their case for them. Every secret weapon, every assassination plot, every whispered plan to finish what the Purge started proves that humanity will never be safe as long as the old council exists. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. One day, Chancellor. After that, the warmongers in my government will have their way, and you will learn what the architects discovered about humanity 300,000 years ago. We are not merely survivors. We are the species that gets stronger every time you try to break us. You had your chance to kill us. You failed. There will not be another. The door closed behind her, and the council descended into pandemonium. Somewhere in the void expanse, Commander Nira Okonkwo watched the transmission from the council chamber and smiled. "Move the fleet to staging positions," she ordered. "It is almost time." Around her, thousands of warships began to power their engines, preparing for the journey to council space. The galaxy's longest nightmare was about to begin. Or perhaps, after 4 centuries of waiting, it was finally about to end. Elder Marcus Webb stood in the garden of the Keeper, knowing that his time had finally come. He was 412 years old. The architect technology that had preserved his body for so long was failing. Each breath came harder than the last. Each heartbeat felt like it might be the final one. He had outlived everyone he had known before the Purge, outlived his children and grandchildren, outlived 3 generations of human leaders, but he had not outlived his purpose. The Keeper floated before him, its translucent form more faded than the last time they had met. The ancient being was dying too, in its own way, slowly joining its people in whatever existence they had found beyond physical reality. "You understand what must be done," the Keeper said directly into Webb's mind. "I understand," Webb replied aloud. "Complete integration with architect consciousness. Full access to all your technology, all your knowledge, all your power. But I will have to transcend. Leave my body behind. Leave my people behind. There is no other way. The humans who came after you are strong, but they are not yet ready to carry the full weight of our legacy. Someone must serve as a bridge. Someone must hold the connection between what you were and what you will become." Webb closed his eyes. He thought of his great-great-granddaughter, Lieutenant Dara Webb, so young and fierce and full of hope. He thought of Commander Okonkwo, burning with rage that would never be satisfied by anything less than total victory. He thought of Ambassador Vance, trying to find a path through impossible contradictions. And he thought of Earth, the blue world that had nearly died 4 centuries ago, now orbiting at the heart of a civilization the galaxy could not comprehend. "I have spent my life building something better than revenge," he said. "I always believed that humanity's greatest strength was our ability to grow beyond our pain, to transform suffering into wisdom, to choose love over hatred. And now?" the Keeper asked. "Now, I wonder if I was wrong. Okonkwo wants war. Half the council is plotting to destroy us. Even with all our power, even with everything the architects gave us, we may not be able to avoid violence." The Keeper's form shifted, and Webb felt something like sympathy flowing from the ancient being. "The choice is not between peace and war," the Keeper said. "The choice is between what you want to become and what the galaxy fears you already are. You cannot control others. You can only control yourself." Before Webb could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The walls flashed red, and emergency announcements filled the air. "Elder Webb to Command Center immediately. We are under attack." Webb rushed through corridors that seemed to bend around him, his failing body suddenly forgotten. When he reached the command center, he found chaos. The Council launched the planet killer, Lieutenant Dara reported. Her young face was tight with controlled fear. They activated it remotely, bypassing all safety protocols. It is aimed directly at Haven Prime. On the main display, Webb could see it, a beam of concentrated energy crossing the vastness of space toward their station. Toward Earth. Toward everything they had built. Time to impact? 7 minutes. Webb turned to the tactical officer. Where is Commander Okonkwo? Her fleet is already moving toward Council space, Elder. She launched as soon as the attack was detected. So it had happened. After 4 centuries of careful diplomacy, of patient waiting, of hoping for a better solution, war had finally come. Can we stop the beam? Webb asked. Dara shook her head. Our shields can deflect most weapons, but this was designed by species who studied the architects. They built it specifically to penetrate our defenses. Webb looked at the approaching death on the display. In less than 7 minutes, Haven Prime would be destroyed. Earth would follow. Everything humanity had accomplished since the Purge would be erased, unless he made the choice he had been avoiding for decades. Lieutenant, he said to his great-great-granddaughter, I need you to evacuate the station. Elder, there is not enough time to evacuate everyone. There will be. Webb placed his hand on her shoulder. I am going to complete the integration. Full merger with architect consciousness. When I do, I will have access to defensive systems that have not been activated in 300,000 years. Dara's eyes widened. But the integration will transform you. You will transcend. You will not be human anymore. I will still be your ancestor. Webb smiled, and for a moment, he looked like the young man he had been before the Purge, before centuries of responsibility had worn him down. I will still love you. That cannot be changed by anything, not even becoming something new. He pulled her into an embrace, feeling her tears against his shoulder. Tell Okonkwo to stop the fleet, he whispered. What I am about to do will change everything. War may no longer be necessary. Then he released her and walked back toward the garden of the Keeper. The ancient being was waiting for him. Its form had solidified slightly, as if gathering strength for one final act. You are ready, the Keeper said. No, Webb admitted, but I will do it anyway. That is what humans do. He stepped into the center of the garden, where a ring of architect symbols glowed on the floor. The plants around him began to sing louder, and the artificial sun overhead pulsed with increasing intensity. Remember what you are, the Keeper said. Not just human, not just architect. Something new, something that has never existed before. Webb closed his eyes and opened his mind. The transformation began. On the command center display, Lieutenant Dara watched the planet killer beam approaching. 5 minutes to impact. 4 minutes. 3 dot, and then something impossible happened. A wave of golden light erupted from Haven Prime, spreading outward at speeds that defied physics. It caught the planet killer beam and stopped it cold. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Stopped, frozen in space like a photograph. Then the light reversed the beam's direction. Dara watched in horror and awe as the weapon's own energy was sent back toward its source. The Council fleet that had launched the attack, hidden in deep space, had exactly enough time to realize what was happening before their own weapon destroyed them completely. The golden light did not stop there. It continued spreading, passing through ships and stations and planets without causing harm, simply touching everything in its path. And then, from the heart of the light, came a voice, not sound, not thought. Something deeper, something that spoke directly to the soul of every being in the galaxy. It was Elder Webb. But also something more than Elder Webb, human and architect, merged into a consciousness that existed between physical and transcendent reality. I have seen what you did to my people, the voice said. and every species in the galaxy heard it simultaneously. I have carried that memory for 400 years. I have dreamed of revenge. I have fantasized about making you suffer as we suffered. Throughout council space, representatives fell to their knees. Ships stopped moving. Entire civilizations held their breath. But revenge would make us no better than you. Hatred would poison the legacy we inherited. Destruction would prove that you are right to fear us. The golden light began to fade, but the voice remained. Instead, I offer something else. Something the architects discovered after millions of years of searching. Something humanity understood instinctively from the beginning. Every being in the galaxy felt it then, a wave of pure memory. Not their own, but belonging to the children who had died in the purge. The terror, the confusion, the desperate hope that someone would save them. And then, equally powerful, the memories of those who ordered the purge. Their fear, their certainty that they were protecting the galaxy, their terrible, tragic belief that they were doing the right thing. You did not kill us out of evil, Webb said. You killed us out of fear. Fear that we were too different. Fear that we were too strong. Fear that we would do to you what you did to us. The memories faded, replaced by something warmer. I am offering you a chance to let that fear go. A chance to build something new. A chance to prove that the galaxy can be better than its worst moments. Lieutenant Dara stood in the command center, tears streaming down her face. Around her, every human who had been ready for war was now silent, touched by the same wave of memory that had swept through the galaxy. Grandfather, she whispered. The golden light pulsed once more, and she felt something like a gentle hand on her shoulder. Tell them I am still here, Webb's voice said, meant only for her. Tell them I will be watching. Tell them the choice is theirs. Peace or war. Growth or destruction. Love or fear. What do I do now? Dara asked. What humans have always done, the voice replied. Find a way to survive. Find a way to thrive. Find a way to prove that we are worthy of everything we have been given. The light faded completely. The voice went silent. And somewhere in council space, Commander Okonkwo ordered her fleet to stop, not because she had been told to, not because the war had been won, but because for the first time in her life, she had felt what her enemies felt, and she discovered that they were not as different as she had believed. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The Galactic Council Chamber was silent for the first time in its history. 12,000 representatives sat motionless in their crystalline seats, still reeling from the wave of memory that had swept through them. Some were weeping. Others stared at nothing, lost in the echoes of feelings that were not their own. A few had simply shut down, their minds unable to process what they had experienced. High Chancellor Vorith stood at his podium, his obsidian staff lying shattered at his feet. His 4 eyes were unfocused, seeing not the chamber around him, but the images that Elder Webb's transcendence had burned into his consciousness. He remembered the purge, not as a strategic decision made in a conference room, but as fire falling from the sky, as parents holding children who would never grow up, as entire cities reduced to ash while the galaxy watched and called it justice. He remembered being afraid, and he remembered making others pay for his fear. I voted for it, he said, his voice cracking. 300 years ago, when the purge was first proposed, I was young. I was ambitious. I wanted to prove myself strong. So I voted to murder billions of innocents because they frightened me. No one responded. No one judged. Every representative in the chamber was confronting their own version of the same terrible truth. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened, and Ambassador Lucia Vance walked in once more. This time she was not alone, but her escort was not the same as before. Captain Thrall Mornash walked at her right hand. The Dominari officer, who had accidentally discovered humanity's survival, now stood as a bridge between species, his gray face showing an expression of hard-won understanding. Lieutenant Dara Webb walked at Lucia's left. The young woman had changed in the hours since her ancestors' transcendence. She carried herself with a weight that had nothing to do with physical burdens. She was grieving. She was growing. She was becoming something new. And behind them, no longer surrounded by warships, came Commander Nira Okonkwo, the warrior who had spent her entire life preparing for vengeance, walked through the chamber with tears still wet on her scarred face. The memories had hit her hardest of all. She had felt not just the suffering of her own people, but the terror of those who had ordered their deaths. She had experienced fear from both sides of the equation. It had not erased her anger. Nothing could erase that. But it had complicated it in ways she was still trying to understand. Lucia stepped onto the central platform and looked out at the broken assembly. "We have all been changed," she said simply. "The question is what we do with that change." High Chancellor Vorith found the strength to speak. "What do you want from us?" "The same thing we wanted before. Recognition, acknowledgement, a seat at the table." Lucia paused. "But now we also want something more. Something Elder Webb showed us was possible." She raised her hand, and the air above her palm shimmered with golden light. The same light that had touched every soul in the galaxy. The architects gave us their technology, their knowledge, their power. But their greatest gift was not any of those things. It was the understanding that power means nothing without purpose. The light formed into an image, 3 distant points in unexplored space. Before he transcended, the Keeper gave us information about other species, young civilizations, like humanity was 4 centuries ago. Intelligent, creative, potentially worthy of the architect legacy, but also potentially dangerous. The image zoomed in on the nearest point, revealing a blue-green world not unlike Earth. The old council would have sent ships to study them from a distance, calculated their threat, potential, decided whether to let them live or die based on fear. Lucia lowered her hand, and the image faded. "We want to try something different. We want to contact them openly, learn from them, share with them, show them that the galaxy does not have to be a place of fear and violence." Admiral Greth of the Velun Consortium spoke for the first time since the memory wave. His insect-like voice was subdued, uncertain. "You would give others access to architect technology? Make them as powerful as yourselves?" "Eventually, yes." Lucia smiled. "Not all at once. Not without guidance. But the architects did not hoard their knowledge, Admiral. They shared it freely with those who were ready. That is why their civilization lasted for millions of years." Commander Okonkwo stepped forward. Every representative tensed, expecting the warrior to demand blood. Instead, she spoke quietly. "I wanted war. I wanted to make you suffer as my people suffered. I wanted to burn your worlds and enslave your populations and force you to spend generations under our heels, learning what it felt like to be powerless." She looked at her own hands, scarred from years of training to fight. "But I felt what you felt. I know now that you are not monsters. You were frightened, just like we were frightened. Just like those new species out there will be frightened when they discover they are not alone in the universe." She met the eyes of the High Chancellor directly. "I will lead the expedition to contact them, not as a conqueror, but as a protector. I will spend the rest of my life making sure that no one ever does to them what you did to us." Vorith stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, painfully, he bowed his head. "The Earth Purge was a crime," he said. "The greatest crime in galactic history. I cannot undo it. I cannot bring back the dead, but I can acknowledge what we did and pledge that it will never happen again. He stepped down from his podium and walked to the central platform. For the first time in 300 years, a High Chancellor stood level with those he was meant to judge. The Dominari Empire formally recognizes humanity's right to exist. We acknowledge the injustice of the Purge and accept responsibility for our role in it. We agree to the restructuring of the Council along the lines you have proposed. One by one, other representatives rose to their feet. Senators and admirals, matriarchs and elders, beings from species that had never agreed on anything began to speak the same words: recognition, acknowledgement, acceptance. The old order was dying. Something new was being born. 10 years passed. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same, but everything about it had changed. The crystalline seats now floated in a different pattern, arranged not by power, but by region. The central podium was gone, replaced by a circular platform where representatives stood as equals. Captain Threll Mornash, now Ambassador Mornash, walked through the chamber with Lieutenant Dara Webb at his side. She was no longer a lieutenant. She was the human representative to the Council, the youngest being ever to hold such a position. "You seem distracted," Mornash observed. Dara smiled. "I was just thinking about my grandfather. I feel him sometimes, watching from wherever he exists now. He seems pleased with how things have turned out. He should be. The galaxy has changed more in 10 years than it did in the previous 10,000. They stopped at a viewing window overlooking the station's exterior. Beyond the glass, ships from 100 species moved in peaceful formation. At the center of the fleet, a massive vessel bearing Earth's symbol prepared for departure. Commander, Okongwo's expedition ship. She was about to leave for the distant region where new civilizations waited to be found. With her went volunteers from every species in the galaxy, united by a shared purpose that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. "Do you think she will find them?" Dara asked. Mornash considered the question. "The Keeper said they were worthy. If humanity could inherit the Architect legacy, perhaps these new species can inherit it too. Perhaps that is what the Architects always intended. Not a single heir, but many. A galaxy united not by fear, but by shared purpose. My grandfather used to say something similar." Dara turned from the window. He believed that humanity's greatest gift was not our intelligence, or our creativity, or our capacity for violence. It was our ability to change, to grow beyond our limitations, to become something new. And have we become something new? Dara thought of Elder Webb, still existing somewhere between human and transcendent. She thought of Commander Okongwo, channeling rage into protection. She thought of Ambassador Vance, who had worked tirelessly to build bridges between species that once would have destroyed each other. "We are always becoming," she said. "That is what it means to be human. We are never finished. We are always growing." Mornash nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why the Architects chose your species. Not because you were the best, but because you never stopped trying to be better." In the distance, Okongwo's ship engaged its engines and vanished into the darkness between stars. Somewhere in that darkness, new civilizations waited to be found. New challenges waited to be faced. New futures waited to be written. And somewhere beyond the physical universe, Elder Marcus Webb watched his descendants take their first steps into an uncharted tomorrow. He had been right all those centuries ago. Humanity's greatest strength was not revenge. It was not anger. It was not even survival. It was hope. The hope that tomorrow could be better than today. The hope that enemies could become friends. The hope that the universe, vast and terrifying and beautiful, could be a place of wonder rather than fear. That was the legacy he had given them. That was the legacy they would carry to the stars. That was the legacy that would last long after the last. Architect had transcended. Long after the last memory of the purge had faded, long after the galaxy had forgotten that humanity had ever been anything other than what they had always been meant to be. Inheritors of everything, builders of tomorrow. Human. The story did not end here, of course. Stories never really end. They simply transform into new beginnings, new challenges, new opportunities for growth. But for now, in this moment, looking out at a galaxy that had finally learned to hope, Dara Webb allowed herself to smile. Her grandfather had been right. Mercy was always the harder choice, but it was also the only choice that mattered.